I really believe that the opportunity now is bigger than ever. There's been a lot of development activity taking place in the climate markets more broadly, in climate policy. A lot of ups and downs, particularly in the carbon markets. But really what we've seen now is a lot of experience being built up. And now we're seeing carbon markets being developed in 15 countries around the world, carbon pricing in probably another 15 countries. So there's a real momentum behind the growth in market-based approaches to address climate change.
In terms of Europe, the carbon market here has undergone a lot of structural shake-ups, I guess, in the last few years, and there are big hopes that sort of new, what's it called, the Market Stability Reserve will offer stability. Do you see that? Are you sensing confidence among your fellow traders, and if so, what's that going to mean in terms of the way the EU emissions will head?
Well, our entire investment hypothesis for entering the EU emissions trading scheme with a new exchange is that market is going to grow. It will grow regardless of what takes place in Paris. The number of installations will increase from 11,000 now to 20,000 in the next 18 months. So the market itself will grow with new compliance entities coming in. If there are more ambitious goals coming out of Paris, then we will see that grow even faster. The Market Stability Reserve will help that further still because it will tighten up the market, will increase the price. As an exchange operator, actually we don't mind what the price is, we care that there's trading and transaction volume happening. But of course, the higher the price, the more meaningful the action, the more people will be interested, and we should see some of the new players coming in and financial actors coming in who maybe were involved in the market a few years ago and have backed out.
And there were, this concern about its credibility and the amount of what people sort of called hot air credits. Are you satisfied that the EU ETS will in time get back to a system which has some kind of basic environmental integrity?
I think so. The reality is that market's worked very well. It's responded to oversupply by having a low price. So it's worked as markets do. There's a need to have a mechanism for withdrawing permits from the market if the market is far too long. And that's now being put into place. So I think that will drive a greater uptake of emissions trading schemes as that's seen as more successful.
And in terms of the EU, you've got the EU market and you've got these other ones cropping up around the world. Is there a need for there to be new and better links between all of these? How do you see that developing? We can see there are already ones in North America, but how do you see the EU links to other markets developing?
It will have to happen. There are 15 markets being created around the world now. And what's needed is some kind of tool that demonstrates commonality and fungibility between schemes. So we at European Environmental Markets and through the Climate Markets and Investment Association are working with the World Bank on their Network Carbon Markets Initiative. That's an initiative that will look to see how we can create fungibility between schemes, how we can assess different schemes for their environmental integrity and credibility, to encourage linking and encourage trading between schemes over time.
And how much are you relying on negotiators at the moment in the UN process to deliver a clear message on markets in Paris, or does it not really matter? There's been a lot of debate today about whether a few lines in some part of the agreement there is going to mean that sort of markets move forward. Does it matter?
It matters. It matters that there's a clear signal. But the reality is it will happen anyway. I was in Paris last week for Climate Week, and what I saw there was real momentum behind business activity. Business knows this is an economic imperative. Business knows they will be regulated, they'll be participating in markets and other climate policies over time, and they're acting in the absence of governments. So really now we're seeing governments will keep up with that, but they need to keep the pressure on, they need to keep demonstrating they're serious, and we need to get a serious commitment to moving towards a genuine 2-degree possibility.
And I noticed on the Climate Markets and Investment Association, of which you are president, you have offices in London, Sydney and DC. I suppose the last two don't really have carbon markets anymore, or at least there are regional ones in the US, and Australia decided to scrap those. I mean, what signs can you see in both of those countries that the debate over carbon markets is changing?
Well, in North America, there's a very big steps moving forward. We now have the California scheme and RGGI for the eastern states. Washington is looking at those, and they're actually looking actively at carbon pricing within the state. So that, I think, is, and as a hub for the US more generally, it's a very important area. Australia is an interesting market. Clearly, it's unfortunate the way that politically they've gone. However, we're seeing corporates in Australia acting. Qantas is a great example of a client of ours, which is an airline which has obligations in 3 different emissions trading schemes, in the ETS in New Zealand, and it's what remains of Australia. But they also have a very active, voluntary, CSR-driven carbon offsetting program. It's incredibly successful. It's binding in some of their clients, and so they're seeing the benefits of that sort of climate action. More broadly, there are moves to reintroduce carbon pricing, but it's so politically sensitive, it remains to be seen how fast that will take place.
Just a final question. In terms of the integrity of carbon credits, the voluntary market, in the past decade there have been a number of sort of fraud cases. There's been a lot of focus on the integrity, the environmental integrity of some of these credits. What can you say to reassure people that in the future those concerns are going to be allayed and dealt with?
Yeah, it's true to say that there were certainly issues of fraud, as there are in many financial markets. The reality is, though, the work I've been doing the last 5 years, the gold standard, was all about bringing credibility and integrity and trust to the asset that's being created, the emission reduction. Now my mission really is to work with European environmental markets as an exchange provider to create liquidity in those markets. All the credibility in the world comes to nothing if there's no market with a buy and a sell side. And therefore we're working towards bringing confidence in the way that those assets are procured.